Welcome to the Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne and this channel is all about bringing you content about childhood sexual abuse. On this channel I share things to do with my experience of going through this childhood abuse. I also share news stories and add my thoughts and commentary to them. From time to time, and unfortunately enough, I do interview other survivors and their supporters in hopes of raising awareness about this childhood trauma. So if this is something that you're interested in knowing about, these videos on childhood sexual abuse, please do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified of any new uploads. And if you do like the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. So this is a news story from the Crown Prosecution Service. I will leave a link to it in the description box below. It says on the 5th of March 2026 at Liverpool Crown Court, Scott Cameron was sentenced for offences he was convicted of in October 2025. He was given an 18-year extended sentence, 12 years imprisonment and an extended 6 years on licence as he was deemed dangerous by the judge. In February 2026 he pleaded guilty to a further offence of inciting a child to engage in sexual activity in relation to a second victim 20 years ago. Today he was also sentenced for that and given a further 12-month prison term in addition to the 12 years. He was barred from ever working with children, and the CPS, which is the Crown Prosecution Service over here in the UK, successfully applied for a sexual harm prevention order to be imposed and restraining orders preventing him from ever contacting the two victims. CPS Mersey Cheshire Senior Crown Prosecutor Georgiana Pentali said Scott Cameron is a dangerous and manipulative paedophile. In October last year, a jury found him guilty of grooming and engaging in sexual activity with a 13-year-old girl. However, it became apparent that this was not the first time Scott Cameron had tried to groom an underage girl, and there is a clear pattern in his methods and behaviour. The Crown Prosecution Service was determined to make Cameron face up to the full extent of his offending, and when further allegations were made, he was charged with another offence of inciting a child to engage in sexual activity almost 20 years ago. He pleaded guilty to that offence at a hearing at Liverpool Crown Court, and he has now been sentenced for 11 offences in total. The 10 offences he was convicted of in October and the additional charge he pleaded guilty to. The CPS would like to thank the victims and witnesses for their help in bringing this successful prosecution and ensuring Cameron faces up to what he has done. So Cameron is a former firefighter. It doesn't actually say what job he was doing where he was engaging with children. I'm taking a guess here. Maybe it was, when they go into schools. I know back in the day, firefighters used to go into schools and talk to children about fires and different things like that. Or maybe it was some type of club the fire station was running. I'm not too sure. But he was doing something where he was engaging with children, and now he's been barred from ever working with children again. So there's a couple of things that stood out to me from this story. The first thing is, when it comes to paedophiles and those who sexually harm children, they rarely only ever do it once. As we heard from this story, it came to light that he had a pattern, a way, an MO of doing things. It wasn't the first time he had engaged with underage girls to entice them and engage in sexual activity. We heard obviously that he had done it before. And as the Crown Prosecutor said, he had a clear pattern and a way and a habit of doing things. So this again kind of strengthens my point that I say time and time again in my videos, that those who do this type of crime against children, those who sexually harm children, don't just do it once. Sometimes they're just good at not being caught. Obviously, when this victim came forward, he then had to own up to it. And, he's got an additional sentence from that. But this just goes to show again, as I said, they never just stop at one. The next thing I noticed from this story is that The other victim that I've just talked to you about, the one from 20 years ago, it just goes to show that, you know, even though that crime was committed then, the police still went forward and charged him, and he was convicted of this crime, which is a positive thing for those who may be thinking about, you know, their historical abuse. Maybe they think that, you know, the police won't take it seriously. But just from this case here, I know every case is different and there's lots of different kind of factors to think about when it comes to going to the police and how they kind of weigh up decisions about historical child sexual abuse cases. But just from this story, you know, it's just an example that, you know, with this victim who came forward 20 years to say he did the same thing to her, he confessed, and obviously a conviction came out of that. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that if you have gone through this in your childhood and maybe at the time you didn't realise it, but as you've got older you've realised that you were sexually abused by somebody and you want to do something about it, with support, I would encourage you to go to the police if you feel that you're able to do that. It's not really clear from this story why they've had to take out lifelong restraining orders for this paedophile so he doesn't contact the victims. I'm not sure if he was, you know, harassing them or anything like that. It doesn't really say, but I think that the sentence that he got, you know, is in line with quite a few of the sentences I've been seeing getting handed down. It seems like, you know, from what I've seen and what's been factually happening when it's come to child sexual abuse cases, the ones that I've seen recently in the news, the sentences are quite heavy, and for good reason. There was a time, you know, where in some places, with some stories, you know, the sentencing didn't really feel like it matched the crime, but more and more with these new stories I'm seeing that they're getting lengthier sentences. This guy, Scott Cameron, he got 12 years imprisonment and a further 6 years on licence, and being put on the sexual harm register. Hopefully this will be an end to his offending. You know, he's going to have a long time in prison to think about his actions and the harm that he's caused to his victims. Who knows what will happen when he gets out, and obviously he will be monitored as well for a further 6 years. But, you know, I feel really bad for the victims, and I hope and pray that they're able to, you know, start to be able to kind of process the things that they've gone through. It's going to be very difficult for them, but I'm hoping with support that they will get the help they need. My prayers are with them. So that's all I wanted to share in this video. Until the next one, take care.